All right, now we're going to set up for the AP full spine. So the first thing I'm going to do, since I just took the lateral image, is I need to move the tube back to the focal film distance of 84. And we have our stickers already marked off, so it's easy for us. And then before I even put the patient near the bucky, I'm going to have this centered to make sure my light source and the middle part of the beam is nice and centered. What we have the patient do is stand facing forward, and then we have them take tiny baby steps back until something touches, so some body part, whether the low back or middle back, and then we just make sure that they're in a somewhat neutral position. Again, we're not changing foot flare, but we do want to make sure that the heel are parallel with each other, they line up with each other on the foot. So if they're forward a little bit, you want to make sure they bring it back. But again, if they have a foot flare, don't alter it. That's how they are normally. And then what we'll do is we'll have them bring their hands back here to get the arms out of the way and hands out of the way. If they can't reach back comfortably, just have them let it hang at their sides, but keep the arms or hands away from the body, because you don't want to get the hands on the film when you take the full spine. Okay, so now I'll show you with Bernie here how we would set our collimation now. So he took tiny baby steps back till he touches, pretend that his arms are hanging back, holding on, and we make sure he's centered. Now, the big thing is if you have a patient that comes in and they have an antalgic presentation, you want to make sure that their hips are centered on the film if they don't all line up within a straight row. So I'm going to come over here. I have the light field open all the way as far as it goes, and now I'm going to tailor my collimation. So I'm going to bring it up a little bit, and I'm going to slowly collimate down, and I want to get just under the eyes, but also wide enough to capture all of the pelvis. So we're just under the eyes and then under the pelvis. And then now I'm going to bring it in, where I bring the collimation in, usually until the light field is in the black part of the bucky. If it's a smaller patient like a kid, I'll bring that collimation in even further. And then we do use one filter on the AP. It looks like this. It has a little stair step right here. Where the stairs are, you always put that facing out towards the patient. We're gonna put it on the very first slot on our filter holder, and then we're gonna bring it down until it's getting the last or the top aspect of the cross. So I'm gonna move Bernie out for a second so you can see. So when we bring that filter down, we want it to hit the very top part of the cross, and we're going to leave it there. And that's where we'll keep it, and that's the only filter we'll use for the AP. And then the last component is I just have the patients reach back on each side like we discussed, and then I position their head to make sure the maxilla is parallel with the ground. And then usually I'll hold their head like this and ask them to open up wide, so it ensures that they're not doing one of these or one of these when they open their mouth really wide. And we should be good to shoot the film. So then come over here, same breathing instructions. Take a deep breath in, all the way out, hold it, and don't move. So we'll shoot that film. Now the patient can relax. Now when we're over here on the screen for processing, we already have our lateral that has processed and is still here. So we're gonna come down to the bottom where it says add view, and then we're gonna still select that middle part of the skeleton, scoli, and now we're going to select AP. For laterality, since both sides are touching the film, we're gonna select both and scan the whole plate. And now it's going to develop the AP. Hi, so initially when we take our full spine x-rays, we take our lateral view first, and we take that in 2 separate images, but we process it as one. So it shows up as one film. So the first thing, make sure your Bucky's at 72 for the focal film distance. And then the next thing we're gonna do is set our collimation. So we wanna set it to like that 18, like what we typically would have with the 18 by 36 full spine film. So we have a cheater in terms of we put stickers on our Bucky to mark and set. So what we do is we guide our light field to the 18 inches, so that's preset. If it's a really tall individual, for example, if they're above like 6'3", 6'4", we extend that a little bit to the 19, but primarily everyone's at 18. So that's what I do first before I put a patient against the Bucky is we are going to set that collimation. So if you can see, I have the light field covering both aspects of the sticker on the 18 and 18. So now that's set, and I have the tube centered. So we're gonna have our patient come in, which we're using Bernie for this example. And ideally you want to have them be in a position where you're getting their low back and their neck visibly within the whole film. So, you know, typically you want to put them in a neutral position where they're in the middle part of the Bucky, but that doesn't always work based on different anatomy of curves. And then the other thing that we have them do is they'll take a step until their left shoulder touches. We give them a giant stick to hold on to. So they'll hold on to our stick with both hands. Typically, I put it in a neutral position. So when we position them, they'll have a slight bend in their elbow, but you want their hands up out of the way. So if they're like this, that's gonna alter their middle back and cervical curves. If they're down too far, like with their hands, then we're gonna get part of the arm on the film. So you want that out of the way, a nice neutral position. Just below the chin is where they're gonna hold on to typically. Nice curve in the elbow, and then relaxed shoulders. And so you'll have them touch until that left shoulder or right shoulder, whichever side you use, is against the Bucky. And then once they look like they're positioned correctly, you don't have to get rid of foot flare, but you do want to make sure the back of the heels are in line with each other, and make sure that their body, their torso isn't rotated at all. I keep their head in a somewhat neutral position, so I will come behind them and just make sure that they're looking straight ahead, their head isn't overly rotated or twisted one way or the other, and make sure the mandible top part is parallel, or I'm sorry, not the mandible, the maxilla is parallel with the floor. And then I put a marker right below their chin. And then I ask them to hold that. So now we're gonna set the position up. So I already have my collimation set for the 18 inches, so I'm not gonna touch that. The top of the light field goes just above the tragus, or a little bit higher up if they're a shorter individual. And then now I'm gonna bring that light field in to collimate it. So we're just getting their cervical and middle back curve. And you wanna try and tighten that in as much as possible to really isolate the view. And then we have a tube that we can move, which is really important. Sometimes you have to slide it either forward or backward, just to match the curve of the patient. And then the last thing is for the cervical thoracic view of the lateral, we do use a filter. So it's a filter that looks like this, where it has this slope and the very pointy part goes towards the patient's nose. And we use it to filter out the cervical spine, hitting just above their shoulder area. So if you look where I put it on Bernie, I'm gonna put the light on. This goes to the front opening of where we can put our filters. And I'm gonna bring that down just so where it cuts out to the upper shoulder. And now we're ready to take the lateral first part of the x-ray. So we're gonna come over here we already have it set up with the patient information. I've put their KVP and mass already for the x-rays I'm going to take. So it's lateral CT, lateral TL, and then the AP full spine. I already have the KVP and MA listed. So now we're going to process that first x-ray in terms of we're going to shoot it. So our instructions for the patients are to take a deep breath in, let it all the way out, hold it, and then we're going to shoot that x-ray. So breath in, out, hold, shoot the x-ray, and then I tell the patient not to move. They can breathe, but don't move. So we're going to come over here now and raise the Bucky up 4. So if you come over here right now where I have the stick to raise it up, it's at 22. So I'm going to bring this up to 26. So that moves up 4. And then this is going to move down 14. So right now it's just about 63. So I'm going to come down 53, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we moved it 14. And then now I just make sure this light field matches up for the low back. I'm going to move this a little bit back and then collimate in. And now we're going to process the lower part. So same breathing instructions. Change your KV and mass if you need to for the density of the patient. But deep breath in, all the way out, hold, and shoot. And now the patient can relax. So over here on this screen, now we're going to process it as a scoli lateral view. So like I said, the patient's information is already in there with the KV and mass. So we're going to finish and scan. We're going to select the chest part of the diagram. We're going to select scoli lateral. Our patient has their left side against the Bucky, so that's what we're going to select. And then with these regions, we're going to scan the full Bucky. And now it should process it with the full lateral image. Even though you took the 2 images in separate films, we're processing it all as one, so it should come as one picture. Okay, you can stop. Okay, so we're going to show you how we analyze a full spine set of films. So this is the lateral film that we took, which, reminder, we took it in 2 separate images. We just waited to scan the plate or the Bucky till the very end, so it ends up showing up as one image on our x-ray. And then we have the other one on the AP on the other side. You can always, if you've taken multiple films, like for example extremities or spot shots, if you come down over here from the tools icon down over to layout and click on this, you can alter how many screens that you have or that show up, which is handy if you want to do it that way. And then anytime you double click on an x-ray, that will zoom in on just that specific x-ray. Okay, so to get started, we always begin with numbering the films. So if you come over here, there's actually 2 toolbars that show up. So there's the long one, and then if you kind of hover towards the top, there is a smaller one that pops up. And there is one called pelvic tool set, this pelvis looking one in the corner. If you click on that, then this advanced tool set comes up. Now we have it where this numbering icon is included in the advanced tool set, and you can change what color you want it to be. We stick with green. So if you click on that and then come over to the AP and click again, a number will pop up. So C1. So we start with C2, and then we number every other vertebra. And essentially all I'm doing is using the middle scroll bar on the mouse to scroll through the numbers, and then I'm just clicking it as I go. And then you'll come over here to the other side. Sometimes you have to click on a number, delete that, click again, and then now you can scroll and then do the same thing that for the AP that you'll do on the lateral. And again, just to make the film not too busy, we use every other vertebra for the numbering system. Okay, and then I double click on the AP, or the lateral rather, so I can do my cervical lines, and then my lumbosacral and sacral base angle for the low back. Now we have our BBs here that we've used, and a lot of times we'll put an annotation that was a break. So if you come over back to the big toolbar, there is this numbering text letter, or sorry, not numbering, but text button with these two A's that you can click on. Now these 3 or 5 icons here, these are specialized. So on yours, they might show up as just blank, but if you go into the configure screen, you can set whatever common icons or tools that you use over here so you have them easily. If not, you have to go into this annotate tool set, click on that, and then you have the text box that way, but we keep it over here for convenience. So I click on that, and then I just put a B for break where we have our BBs. Sometimes we use other references like moles or tattoos, and then we'll just document whatever that is. Now when I come here into the cervical spine, I'm going to zoom in, and we're going to make our lines for the cervical analysis. So in my advanced tool set, I have this line right here, and you can change whatever color you want it to be. Again, we stick to green, and then you can change how long the line is. We always do 10-inch lines, and so if you click on that, then you can either click and then click again, and it will create a line for you based on the direction of those clicks, or you can click, drag, and release, and it will also create a line that way. So essentially you can use that to make all your lines for the cervical end plate so you can see how the overall curve looks. So I'm not going to do all of these, but just so you have an example. And then I just move it back towards the back of the vertebra. And again, we use a 10-inch line so the lines go off the screen so we get an accurate representation of what the curve looks like. Now to make the atlas line and odontoid plane line, what I do is I use that same line icon, but I make it smaller and do a 1-inch, and then I use it to mark the position of the dens. So typically like what we would do for a normal line analysis of the dens, I make sure that matches. And then with this dens line still selected, I come over here to this tool, which is the perpendicular matching line. It's already set for 1 inch. I click on it, and then I just click right here, and it is creating a perpendicular line based off of my odontoid line. So this is really helpful, and then you already have your line set up for the upper cervical. Now if you want to have a global curvature, so you can kind of see how that's represented, like what we do with the footballs when we're analyzing on plain film, you can come over here to this. Wait, hold on. I have to find it. Oh, sorry. It's in the advanced tool set. So down here, there's this curve. It just says curve, and then it has an L. So this is for the lumbar curve. If you click on it and hit C1, you can make a cervical curve. And I will attach the measurements that you need to enter in the configuration. But once you have those measurements in your Clarity configuration, it can generate a curve for you. So what you'll do is you'll click on C1, click on the curve line, and then use your reference point. So I typically do the center of C1, and then I use the superior anterior aspect of T1, and you make 2 points there, and then you click. And so now you have a curve. So the dotted line is what ideally we would want the curve to look like, and then you can use the solid line to either trace the outline of their existing curve, or you can just bring it forward to the dotted curve so they can see a clearer image of what the curve should actually look like. And you can do the same thing within the low back. You just come down here, so instead of the C1 you're going to click L. I use the superior aspect of L1 and then the superior anterior aspect of sacrum. Click on that, and then again you have a generated curve, and those match pretty close to what our football measurements are. And again, I'll give you those measurements separately so you can import them into Clarity. Now, down in the low back, we're going to make sacral base angles and a lumbosacral line. So I make the lumbosacral line first, and you are going to want to find the angle tool. Now, again, I have this on my commonly used tools down here, but if you come up into measure, you will also find it that way. So click on the measurement and then click on the angle. So now you have that. And what I do is just click anterior to the sacrum, and you're going to want to drag the line backwards to the posterior aspect and just have it match up whatever that sacral baseline angle is doing. Then you're going to still keep holding that click, but now you're going to release it, and then now you can drag it forward. So what I'll do is I'll click again, and then I will take my hand tool to drag this around and make sure that it matches up what the sacral base angle or sacral base line is, and then I drag this top part of the angle to make sure it's matching what the bottom of the L5 end plate or disc is doing. So now I have my lumbosacral angle, and I move that out of the way, and I'm going to now make a sacral base angle. So you go back to that same angle button, do the same thing, click anterior to this sacral base. You're going to drag it back. Now unclick, and then you're going to hit the control key. And when you hit the control key, it makes a line that's parallel with the horizon. So while that control key is still being held, then you click again and you can release. And now you have your sacral base angle. And then I always just make sure this bottom part of the line matches up with whatever I identified for my lumbosacral. And then I usually stack them like this. So I have those two angles always on the x-ray. If you want to put hashes on which bones you're going to list potentially, you can come over here in the advanced tool set. There's a little cross called point. You can make it whatever color you want. If you click on that, then now you can put crosses on potential vertebra that you are going to be listing. If you want to put any type of verbiage on the film, again, you can go back to the text box and you can type whatever you want, like spondylo, for example, and then drag that wherever you want it to be. If you want to really highlight an area, if you go into this annotate button over here and click on that, there is a text arrow. And so if you click on the text arrow, you're going to want to draw a line pointing to whatever it is that you want to showcase. So I'm going to click out here, I'm going to drag towards T7, and then a text box will come up and you can put compression fracture, for example. So then now you have that arrow pointing to whatever you want attention drawn to, and you can always move this and do whatever you need to do with it. And that's pretty much it for the lateral lateral film. Now when we look at the AP, you can do the pelvic annotation. So if you're in the advanced tool set, now you're going to tab over or click over to automatic, and it's going to give you the prompts to do the line analysis. So you just follow whatever prompts they're giving you, which is, make your femur headline, both superior aspects of the iliac crest. Then you're going to do the ish tubes, pubic symphysis, sacral tubercle, make your sacral baseline, and then on each side of the sacrum, and then it will generate your listings. So you have that. Now, when I do any type of listings the rest of the way within the spine, I'm going to click back to manual, and then I'm going to use this same line tool that I've used repetitively. And again, we make this 10-inch lines, and then now you can essentially create a line using whatever references you need to use. And so I will do that throughout the spine to do my listings, for example. And like I might, for example, list T11. So here I'm going to list this as a PLI-T, for example. So I'll go over here to the text box, click on that. Now I can type PLI-T. I have that over here, and then I'm going to drag T11 over there. So I have that, and I'll do that throughout the whole spine, including upper cervical. I use the 10-inch lines. Just a couple other tools that you can use if you want to go off of level foundation and using your sacral baseline. If you come over to the advanced tool set, there's a tool called parallel matching line. I usually make this either a different color or a longer line, so I keep it at a 12-inch line. If you click on this, then click on the sacral base angle, and then click again, it will create a line that matches your sacral base angle. So now you can use that to scroll up and do level disc theory that way as well. So those are potential options. Those are the main components or the main tools that you'll use when you are using annotation. The other thing that I will often use is this Cobb angle. So for example, if you want to measure a scoliosis in the spine, or when we're doing our radiology reports, I get a measurement of the cervical spine and the low back. So I'll use those two lines to create a Cobb angle that I can use as my reference for measurements. So that's one option that you can use. A couple other features, if you come back over here to the, what's it called? Tools, toolbar. So you can do the smart WL, and if you just kind of drag it across the whole spine, it will lighten it or darken it. You can use this invert button, and it will invert an image, which is helpful. If you need to flip an image, so for example, you want to look at a lateral from the side, you can come over here to the rotate and then click on rotate right and just click that around. If you come over here back to the tools button and then you click on reset, it will reset it back to how it was submitted to the x-ray clarity analysis, but it will keep all of your annotations. You can come over to annotate and say you want to look at the x-ray briefly without any annotations. Click on this eye looking thing, up here. It's called toggle annotations. If you click on that, it will remove all your annotations, and then you click on it again, it will bring it back. And then the last part is saving a JPEG version of the x-ray. So if you click O on your keyboard, then patient's name will populate right here. So it will save with the patient's name on it. For HIPAA purposes, I'm not going to do that. But if you come down here to this report tool and hit JPEG, then now you can create a JPEG based on whatever you want to call it, and save it wherever you need to save it. And then that will create the JPEG for you that you can upload to Clarity.